Have it. So just to kind of give you guys just a preface of what we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation, it is going to be about DeepCool technology and esports, but more so it's going to be about how a community in esports grows and how companies like DeepCool and other companies that you're fairly familiar with within the same space encourage esports and growth within the collegiate esports space. And so that's something I'm going to be covering a lot in this presentation, first and foremost. I want to make the presentation educational, not just from, our tech standpoint, but also just in a way that if any of you are interested in esports and the tech in esports and how to kind of grow an esports scene, then you guys can leave with some kind of knowledge on how to maybe start building your own esports scene if that is something you're interested in. My name is Jeffrey Sifuentes. I came from the University of San Diego, UCSD to be exact. I spent essentially my entire collegiate career in esports, as well as just working on my major, which was a media focus. After that, I kind of focused on more media-centric job positions. So I was a graphic designer. I did a couple of media jobs, and then eventually I landed a job at DeepCool, where I am the digital marketing specialist. So I get to work a lot in just content creation. If you guys follow any of our social medias, which I encourage you to do, you'll see a lot of the content that I put out, as well as some of the postings I do myself, along with my marketing manager, of course. And so just in general, during this presentation, we're just going to kind of go over what exactly we do, who we are, and you know what, let's just get into it. So who is DeepCool? This is a question that I kind of get asked a lot because our brand is not that familiar. So just to kind of give a basic rundown, we are a cooling and case company within essentially the PC hardware space. So we make coolers, liquid coolers, PC cases, power supplies, a lot of those products that you're probably familiar with if you ever worked on a computer or if you've ever built your own computer. And DeepCools is specifically a China-based company. So they're headquartered in Beijing, and then they have their manufacturing facilities are in Shenzhen. We're not just a PC case company or cooler company. That's how we started, but it's recently grown to having our own peripheral lines. We came out with our most recently mice and keyboards. They're actually pretty proud of. We came out with a 65% keyboard that's gotten generally really good feedback from people within the keyboard kind of mechanical keyboard space. I myself am a mechanical keyboard enthusiast, so when I got it, I was actually very impressed by what we have. So this is sort of like just a general graphic of what we offer to everyone. Just cases, coolers, keyboards, PSUs, and stuff. And something that you kind of might be seeing right now is just like, oh, this is interesting. Like I've always seen these products and from different companies, and yeah, you're right. We share the space with companies like Cooler Master, NZXT, and Corsair, except just DeepCool in general does not have a very big presence within North America. And so we're trying to resolve that issue in, well, doing things like this, right? Participating in events with collegiate esports. We understand that this is a way to grow. I know very, very well that this is essentially the direction we should be going. In supporting esports at a collegiate level, just from my own experiences back when I was in UCSD. So I understand the benefit to both collegiate esports as well as our own growth and in North America in order to kind of help get our name out there, to be in the same realm of Cooler Master, NZXT, and Corsair, and all of these other big name brands that you're probably familiar with. Compared to them, we're just really tiny, but we're trying to really break into that space. And so just going to give a quick rundown as to our products and our tech, just so that you have a better understanding of kind of what products we offer. So in the cooling department, we offer air coolers. This is sort of what made us very well known. On a global scale, DeepCool is very well known. It's literally, I think, just North America that people aren't familiar with our brand. We're big in Brazil. We're pretty big in LATAM, even though we're still growing that area as well. In China, we're huge. Japan, we're their best-selling cooler, apparently. I wasn't aware of that until a couple of weeks ago. Russia, when the little crisis going on there, but we're really popular in Russia as well, and Europe, fairly popular in Europe as well. So we're a global brand, but in North America, people aren't familiar with our products. So in our air coolers, this is sort of a just kind of a brief line. We have a lot more than this, obviously, but these are some of the more well-known ones. And the blue one that you can see here, that's the Gamix 400. That one's probably, if you have heard of our brand, it might have been because of this cooler. This one is fairly like just really popular in the US because it's just a very good cooler for its price point. And then the most recent one is the one on the far left, which is the AK620. That one recently has gotten very good praises from influencers that you may be familiar with, such as Gamer Nexus. He's really praised our product, which is good because he's had some not so good experiences with our product in the past, but that was rectified through efforts in boosting our marketing efforts and actually advertising what we're selling. In the realm of liquid cooling, we have essentially these are our three main coolers that if you have ever seen them, then they're probably one of these three. Um, the names are as below. They're all very similar, and these are within the same space of liquid cooling are actually fairly better. And something that a lot of people don't know is that the companies like Corsair, NZXT, and Cooler Master, and some other companies, I'm sure, they all have to abide by the same patent on their liquid cooling. So essentially, I think it's Acetec that has the essentially the copyright on how the coolers can be built. So essentially, they have to pay Aztec to use their schematic for their cooler. So realistically, when you're using the other coolers, they're all very similar, if not the same. Where ours is actually a little bit different. We invest in um, customization. So the logo chip on the far left one, um, that's customizable. You could put your own logo there if you want. But also we use anti-leak technology, which is about pressure. So we make sure that the pressure within the cooling component is regulated, so that way it prevents leaking. And generally, our coolers actually do have a failure rate that's lower than their competitors. Uh, we tend to work with a lot of system integrators, SIs. So if you're familiar with iBuyPower, CyberPower, these other companies that build PCs for people, they like our cooler a lot because, well, we sell a fairly good cooler at a cheaper price point than the competitors, and it generally lasts longer than theirs. Um, so they're very, happy with our cooler. And, if you are considering building a PC, by all means, you look at our stuff. And then again, we have cases. These are kind of the three cases that we've recently come out with that we're really trying to push. These are essentially in line with our new brand identity. I think we rebranded about a year or so ago. And so this is just generally kind of the cases and direction that we're going. We're trying to go with function as well as form. And so a lot of these cases provide really adequate cooling and a lot of space for you to put a lot of your components, because we all know that PC components are getting huge, GPUs are ginormous, and air coolers are getting bigger. Just everything is getting huge. So we're trying to give you enough adequate space to build within the case. If you are looking to build your own, please consider it. These are the names of all the cases. All right, so let's get into the meat of the presentation, which is going to be essentially where we fit in the esports space, but also and how we're improving it. But also we should probably take a minute to kind of understand the esports space. And generally, when I look at the esports ecosystem, there's four things that really I think I would call them pillars of the ecosystem. Um, Not all of them are necessary, but and in some cases, some of them bleed into other like pillars essentially. So the first one is competition. I think we're kind of familiar with this. Esports is a very competitive space, right? There's tournaments, there's, on a local level, there's tournaments, on a regional level, there's tournaments, and then on a national and international level, there's always tournaments. And I think that's one of the driving forces as to why esports is so huge. We like seeing our teams play. I mean, CSUDH, you guys are heavily invested in competing in esports. You guys have like a team in every single game, as far as I can tell. I mostly follow the Valorant team just because I like Valorant myself. But I know you guys have won national championships in Overwatch, and I believe Valorant as well, and Rocket League. And so competition to me really feels like one of those core principles in the ecosystem that really make it function and really make it flourish. Um, and then the next one is equipment. Equipment is, I kind of consider it just more like, consoles if you're running like a Smash tournament, or, PCs, mice, peripherals, that kind of thing. All of these things can be provided by, companies like us who have those equipment available, or just by the community itself. And speaking of which, community is one of the, I would say, aside from competition, the next biggest element of the esports ecosystem. Most because without the community, you really don't have anything there. The community is essentially, I think, one of the biggest driving forces of why esports is as big as it can be, right? I mean, all of you here, I mean, there's only a few of you, but every single one of you just being here is supporting esports in a small way, you know? It's not done by hundreds of people. It starts small, right? You got to start somewhere, and then you kind of have to keep building onto that, and eventually you grow your community big enough to where it gets recognition. I'm very familiar with that myself in my experiences, which I'll get into a little bit later. And the next one is support. This one's a little bit more nuanced, because support can really mean anything. It could be support from your community, right? They provide equipment for you to use in a tournament or an event that you're hosting. But I consider it more just like a general uh, area in supporting from companies such as DeepCool and all these other ones that you may know. Because once you get to a level of the ecosystem, you start getting the eyes of sponsors onto you, and then sponsors need you as much as you need them. And in that case, I think it's a very important pillar, because there's that relationship that is beneficial to both parties. And I think without it, the space can't thrive as well as it can. One company can only do so much. It needs to have a support of someone else, or a community can only do so much. It needs support from elsewhere. So we'll kind of get into a little bit more of each one. So competition, kind of like as I mentioned, tournaments, right? This is sort of, if you guys are into esports and watch esports regularly, tournaments happen very frequently. And some of you probably watch a tournament. I know I watch tons of tournaments. I love watching Valorant tournaments. So I start watching them every weekend. And sort of that level of competition, I think, is crucial, right? I think we've all experienced the scenario where you're hanging out with your friends, you're playing a game, doesn't matter which one, because it's always going to end up in as a competition. You start saying, like, you start bantering with your friends. You're just like, no, I think I'm better than you. No, I think I'm better than you. And then that whole competition between you and your friend kind of arises, right? And then eventually you become like the best of your friend group. But then after that, you start getting the itch for competition again. You're just like, no, I think I'm just good. And then you hear some other random guy who's just like, no, I'm better than you. And then you're just like, no, I know I'm better than you. And then that whole thing kind of flourishes into a tournament. It might start off casually, right? You're just playing a game together, but eventually it becomes more. And then soon enough, you want to start proving yourself. So you start going to tournaments and whatever that may be. I started off going to Smash tournaments. I was it was that was the story with me, and I hear that story all the time. You're the best in your friend group. You think you're the best, so you go to a tournament and then you just get crushed. But you kind of get that drive for competition. So you just want to keep competing, and I think that in itself is a really big factor. And then equipment, as I kind of mentioned before, this is very dependent on essentially kind of the support, which is what I was saying, how some of these bleed into the others. So when you get support, you might get equipment, and then you can also get equipment just from your community. Crowdsourcing is a very big thing sometimes, and sometimes it's even better because people don't want to play on a pre-built PC or a setup that's not their own. They want to be comfortable, right? They want to have their own mouse, their own keyboard, something that they're familiar with, their own monitors. And so there's in terms of equipment can kind of mean just in general coming from the community or from a supplier such as DeepCool. If Dominguez Hills comes to us and says, hey, we want to run this Valorant tournament, it's a small one, it's going to be like a little LAN thing, we need a bunch of keyboards and mice, then heck yeah, we're going to throw you guys a tons of keyboards and mice for you guys to use. um I do want to emphasize that equipment isn't necessary to elevating your esports ecosystem, because again, you don't have to worry about having tens of computers just lying around ready to go, or 10 like dozens of consoles ready to go. This is all stuff that can be achieved through, well, yeah, your community, right? Kind of as I mentioned, this is actually a photo from one of the tournaments I ran. If you can see in the bottom photo, all the way in the corner of the room, I'm wearing I think it's a Jolteon hat. But anyway, I digress. Uh, in this tournament, it was all possible because we had people come in and bring their setups, bring their consoles, and they have trust in us that we're gonna be able to use it effectively and keep it safe for everyone to use. And I just made sure that that was always the case. And this was a Smash tournament. I come from that kind of realm. I run tons of Smash tournaments. I competed myself, and so really, realistically, things like this and community is one thing that I think fuels the esports ecosystem, because it starts off small like this, right? You have a group of people that all want to compete, or they want to have a tournament of some sort, and then eventually that kind of gets from word of mouth. People are just like, wait, what's this? This school is hosting a tournament. Well, maybe we should go check it out. And then you know suddenly it's no longer students that are just attending your tournament. It's a bunch of people from the regional community coming in. Our tournament ended up becoming one of the biggest ones in San Diego. I don't know about that now, since the whole COVID situation kind of lessened the traffic there. But at the time, we were one of the biggest ones because we were a consistent tournament weekly, and the community knew that we ran an efficient tournament. And again, I kind of just want to preface that this community doesn't have to be hundreds of people. Again, like the amount of participants that are here today, that's already like a little community right here. um, it can start small. And it more than oftentimes will start small. You got to, like I mentioned before, you got to start somewhere. But community is one of those driving factors that keeps the esports ecosystem alive, and sometimes it just keeps uh entire esports alive. Coming from Smash, I know, like I love Smash Ultimate, but Melee is my Smash Melee is essentially my one true love, right? And that game gets no support aside from outside sponsors. It doesn't get any support from Nintendo because no one's going to support it, but it's supported by its community, right? Because it's a very tight knit, passionate people that keep it alive. And it's just that kind of support and community. When you make it strong enough, it definitely empowers the ecosystem in the space. It eventually just becomes its own thing. And then again, support. Dominguez Hills has a great support system. Hopefully, we join the ranks of the support system, right? I'm still waiting on Ruben to give me details on that partnership. But essentially, once you kind of start getting support from sponsors outside of your community, it really starts to legitimize the space, right? Because eventually, it gets eyes on you. There's money going into it now. It's not necessarily just, oh, there's just a bunch of gamers getting together and playing a game. No, it's a very real prospect, and it's a real way of kind of making something into either a profession or turning a hobby into a potential, well, career, I guess. There's people who just went from running tournaments, be participating in tournaments, to just going full on content creation, streaming. Or if they're just saying, hey, like I really like working on games, then they just go into game design or graphic design. They're like, they need to make graphics for these games, and they need to do graphics for social media. Someone's got to do that, so they hire them. And so that's kind of the support that companies can give. I know me myself, in DeepCool, we're hoping to support the Dominguez Hills Esports initiative by providing not just monetary funds, but also just equipment for the incubator lab to be finished and completed. And so I think that's just kind of generally important. I think Dominguez Hills has a really good support system, probably one of the best I've seen in terms of just general collegiate esports. When I was in UC San Diego, I could not imagine the level of support that I see Dominguez Hills getting. And so when I see that, I just want to kind of help and support that growth. Like I come from a grassroots area, so I kind of know how that happens. And so that kind of lends into our next place, DeepCool's place in the esports space. It all rhymes. Didn't mean to do that. So the way we are able to kind of support um, esports in general is kind of closely related together, community and competition. We were at the Raising the Canes event that Dominguez Hills hosted the other week, which was a lot of fun. Just, if you didn't come out, you missed out. And it was participation is one of the biggest things that any company can do in order to just kind of support uh, like a grassroots or growing esports ecosystem, because it shows that we're willing to take the extra step and participate in these competitions and events to really drive people to come out and participate themselves, right? It's one thing to just have an event and then have people come in, but when there's sort of an incentive to go, it always increases traffic, right? So that's what we're trying to do, at least in Dominguez Hills and in general esports, like collegiate esports as well. We're not just trying to do this with Dominguez Hills. This is where we're starting, but we want to go to other colleges and also help them. Um, because it's one of those things where and it's a personal motivation for me, because when I was in UC San Diego, we've had sponsors, but not in the way of kind of this level that Dominguez Hills has, where they kind of are able to just kind of throw stuff together and have people come out to these events. It was always reserved for bigger events like our regional expos that people were really fond of and familiar with. And in general, throughout the year, we didn't get that much support from outside sponsors. We got some support, but it was all had to do. It was basically all left to us, right? Whereas they didn't provide enough either equipment or some kind of monetary value that would help kind of our growth. It was more collaborations. Like we would work with a restaurant and be like, okay, we're going to host a little event here, kind of similar to what you guys did in Raising Canes, but it was not on a way smaller scale. We would bring our own TVs and consoles and to an event and be like, okay, whoever comes here and whoever buys the food here will donate to our organization. Whereas here, Monster, ViewSonic were helping putting this event together. And that's kind of crazy to me. I never really imagined that collegiate esports could get to that level. And then the one way I think, and one of the bigger ways that we're going to be able to support the esports space is, equipment, right? We're going to be able to provide coolers. We're going to be able to provide cases, which, by the way, if you made it this far, congratulations. We are going to be doing a raffle, and I'll say the details on how to do that later. But this is one of the fastest and easiest ways we can start supporting collegiate esports, right? Just providing necessary equipment for raffles, giveaways, and such, and then monetary value for however you want to use that monetary value, right? It's whether it's going to be to upgrade certain parts in the incubator lab, or maybe you want to upgrade like I don't know, a desk or something. But this is one way that DeepCool in itself can participate and really elevate the space by supporting mostly through equipment and monetary value. But we are looking to engage with the community, attend more events, really help out in that space. So since this is a cybersecurity event, I'm just gonna throw basically an ad. I'm not gonna try to make it too long. Ruben kind of told me to do this, so I'm just gonna do it. So DeepCool can help in cybersecurity. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know a ton about cybersecurity, but I know it can be a CPU intensive process. When guess what? We make CPU coolers, and they can cool down your CPU to do any of the intense CPU processing that you're going to be doing. But in general, yeah, our products do a really good job at cooling your computer. They keep them running really smoothly. I did a benchmark on my computer on at work because I do a lot of media work. And my thing was below 60 degrees Celsius. It never went that high, even on like 4K rendering loads or anything like that. So it was actually really good. So if it's good for media and rendering processes, I'm sure it'd be great for whatever it could cybersecurity is intensive. And again, I apologize. I am not a cybersecurity expert, but just know that our product is pretty good for cybersecurity. It can help regulate the temperatures on your CPU. And so now I kind of just want to get into like the relationship with DeepCool and Dominguez Hills. So as I mentioned before, it is our first step in supporting esports. Prior to this, at least in North America, we have no presence in collegiate esports or really esports in general. Um, and that's a motive I have personally for the company to grow, is to participate more in these esports. And Dominguez Hills is just sort of that first step. And so we're just going to be able to grow as a result, and we're going to engage in, either small scale events such as like the Raising Cane's event, or bigger ones, and even events like today, right? This is something that we participated in because we want to support Toro Hack as well as Dominguez Hills Esports. And then, oops, sorry. And then another way is providing PC components and PCs. This is something that me and Ruben have been talking about, um, where we're glad to provide, any necessary components to help build the incubator lab and the PCs within it. And we're also happy to just build some of the PCs ourselves. We don't have a ton of money, but we can help, build some PCs to go into the incubator lab for sure. And as anything to support a space like that. I think some kind of land center and collegiate esports is always going to be awesome. And I'm always going to be essentially down to help out in that aspect. And so again, giving away some resources, so giveaways like, prizes and such, coolers, cases, mice, whatever you essentially would need for an event to kind of entice people to come in. And then one that's not really talked about too much is actually giving opportunities to further career growth and career development in esports, um, which is fairly rare. Like I can't recall any other college that made it a point that when they talk to a company to say, hey, we want to make sure our students have a a career path within your company, some in essentially to your company, or how to get into esports, which was when Dominguez Hills came to me to talk about. I was like very surprised because I didn't expect that level of commitment. But overall, in general, I was impressed by that, just that motive and initiative that they kind of came to me with. Uh, Again, just from my own experiences, I wouldn't have ever considered that the companies would give us, job opportunities or even internship opportunities just because we're partnered with them. It was more of just like a very, I don't want to say toxic relationship because that's not the right word, but it's very much when you work with a lot of companies, it's just like, oh, what you want? You just want like 50 keyboards for sure. All right, okay, now leave us alone. And then that's kind of where the relationship ends. Whereas, Dominguez Hills really wants to actually have a bridge between the college and then the company, and then a career path in between those. And I'm very open to it as well. From our side, we could always use more help providing monetary funds, as well as just, a career opportunity, whether it's an internship for college credit or paid gig as well, because it's a fast growing job market, essentially esports. 5 years ago, there weren't nearly as many positions in the esports space as there is now. You go to LinkedIn or Indeed, there's some people are looking for something in esports, looking for coaches, they're looking for graphic designers, media designers, talent managers, just everything you can kind of think of. And if we can kind of help in that realm as well and provide some job opportunity for future people and to really have a passion in esports and want to make it maybe part of their daily life and routine, by all means, I'm all for it. And I hope that we can further career growth and development in esports as well, working with Dominguez Hills, providing people an opportunity to actually work in esports, because it's very hard to do unless you know someone on the inside. um, and which you can kind of claim this is, but it's a lot more open because there's a lot more opportunity. And then I always see, because I lurk in the Esports Discord, Dominguez Hills. There's always job postings that Ruben is encouraging everyone to apply to, and that's something good to see. That's something that I didn't see when I was in college, and 100% supporting of. So that's kind of the end of the presentation. We're just kind of going to go over like the DeepCool marketing team, just so you guys can have a face to the people. So this is just the team. Mike, he's the marketing manager. He does a lot of our email marketing promotions, our Amazon sales and UX sales promotions, as well as he kind of helps me brainstorm content ideas, which is largely my job. Alan Cizzetto, he's our product marketing manager. So he has a very involved role in the product marketing, as well as just like the product development. He's actually helped develop a lot of the recent products that we come out, which have been really well received. So he does a really good job, and he has a history at working at Gigabyte, so he's very familiar within the gaming and esports space. And then there's me, the digital marketing specialist. Really, I should just be called a content creator because that's really all I do. But I helped in community management within our Discord. I help also do social media posts and promoting general like sales that we have going on. And then a large portion of my job is content creation and making memes on TikTok. And doing stuff like this outreach. I actually do a lot of outreach with collegiate esports and also just local esports communities as well, to try to sponsor some events here and there. And then yeah, so if you made it towards the end, we are having a raffle. Super simple. Again, we want to support the colleges, and we kind of want to support anybody who's trying to build like a PC, right? So we're going to be giving away a cooler, power supply, a mice and keyboard. Very simple to enter. Just follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and then DM us with the code word ToroHackDC, and then from those we'll pick someone. Not included in this is also like merch and other like shirts and hoodies and stuff of the like. And that's kind of it. Yeah. Thank you for coming. If I have to leave you guys with any message, is that DeepCool as a company is trying to support esports and the esports space as much as it can, but really what kind of keeps it alive is community members like you, right? Like all of you who participated here today. It's really about you guys and how you participate and just kind of actively are involved in this space. So when 7 of you guys here, I really appreciate every single one of you that's come out, because again, the space can't exist without you guys.
Okay, so does anyone have questions about the DeepCool presentation? Please do not be shy to ask questions. It is the time right now to ask questions. So if you have any questions.
Can you go back one slide so just so I can see? Yes, perfect.
Yeah, we can just leave that there.
Thorough hack this. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask any. I'm a fairly open book, so I just answer everything honestly as possible.
Okay. So if there's no questions, then thank you for everyone for being here in Zoom session, listening and hearing out from our speaker, Jeffrey Sifuentes. And we appreciate staying here with us and your time also, your valuable time. Thank you everyone for joining in.
Yeah, thank you for everyone to come out.
Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll go also. Oh, thank you, Jeffrey Sifuentes.
Yep.
Thank you for the
All right.
presentation.
Yeah,
I'll be
no, thank you for
leaving.
having me.
Yeah, very glad.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.